Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on True Story FM. I am Pete Wright, and I'm here with Nikki Kinzer. Right
Hello.
as she takes a drink.
I know.
Outstanding timing.
Of hot cocoa. I'm having hot cocoa this morning.
What a day. It's a banner day for Nikki Kinzer.
Yeah, I don't have coffee creamer, so I'm going for the hot cocoa.
For the flavored, just straight to the main line. We are continuing our series. What did we call this series? It was a series, a little mini series. What'd you call it?
It's a ADHD kind of
symptoms.
Impact on ADHD, something like that.
We don't know.
The things that we don't talk about.
Right. The ADHD secret symptoms. That's what it is.
Secret symptoms. Oh, I like
secret
that.
Symptoms of ADHD. We just have to workshop a little bit more. We'll eventually land on it. Last time we talked about problem solving. This time we're talking about decision making and why ADHD decisions turn into mazes. And we're very excited to talk about that. Before we do that, head over to takecontroladhd.com. Get to know us a little bit better. Subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can listen to it right on the website if you're listening to it on the website now. You can also connect with our community either on Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest or Blue Sky at Take Control ADHD. But to really connect with us, join us on the ADHD Discord community. That's where we'd love to have you. Just visit takecontroladhd.com/Discord. And you will be whisked over to the general invitation and login page. If you are looking for a little more, we would love to help you find it. Head over to patreon.com/the-ADHD podcast. Patreon is listener-supported podcasting. With a few dollars each month, you can guarantee that we continue to grow the show, add new features, feed our families, put shoes on our feet, the usual stuff. And you get access to lots of good stuff. You get access to the podcast a week early than everybody else. You get extended editions of all of the current episodes, including Q&A after the episode that it doesn't appear in the public feeds. It's just like vanished, but you get it if you're a member of Patreon. Plus, you get access to all of the triple secret Discord channels that just magically appear when you are a Patreon member and sign in with your Discord account. So it's really, really great, and we hope you consider doing that. Once again, patreon.com/the-ADHD podcast. Decisions, Nikki Kinzer. Help me make my decisions.
How do you think you do? Do you think you're a good decision maker?
On some things. Some things,
like
I can make very quick decisions. Probably, I don't know. How do you define good decisions?
I don't even want them to be necessarily good decisions. Are you able to make the decision without, regardless of what the, fallout of it is?
There are some truths that I hold inalienable.
Mm-hmm.
And those
That's a big word.
I will not risk the health and safety of myself, my family, or my home by working on major appliances anymore. So if Kira walks into, but this just happened. If Kira walks into the bedroom and says, the temperature isn't changing when I turn the heat on in our house, there's something wrong with our furnace, I grab a phone faster than you can say, wait a minute, don't call anyone yet. Because I immediately want to call somebody. That is a thing that I am not equipped for. I'm not good at. I know that about myself. It's so clear there are no decisions to make. It's just, there's a piece of equipment that's broken in our home, and I'm going to get it fixed by somebody who is trained to do so. I don't do a lot of Googling or those are decisions that are very easy for me to make quickly because I know I don't have to think about it. Right. Okay, I just have to say, I happened to peek over at the chat room and Melissa just said, clearly, Pete can't even decide if he's good at deciding. I see you. I hear you. I feel you.
What about everyday decisions? Like what you make for lunch, what you have for dinner?
I don't want to talk about it. We're fine.
You just don't want to talk about it? But here we are on a podcast about making decisions, and we are not going to talk about Pete.
I feel like that may unveil a little bit too much. I'm not great at it. And as a result, like when I go into lunch, this is like if I just had a restaurant, when I go into lunch in my kitchen, where I work out of my house, you find like a spread of stuff that I get out of the refrigerator in the cabinet because I don't know what to eat. I eat some of the things, some of the things just while grazing. Eventually I've had enough of like to make up a meal, and sometimes I put it all away. It's
Mm,
just like food
sometimes, yeah,
decisions are chaos. There is
yeah.
there are few questions I hate worse than what are you thinking for dinner?
Oh, I
I
know,
get
I
that
don't
a
like that
lot.
question
I hate
either.
that so much.
Yeah, yeah, I don't like
Yeah.
that question either. I don't wanna talk about that either. Uh, so
But you say, I mean, I think you just with that opening, you highlighted my thinking about decision making, which is if there is no friction, like my home equipment stuff, then I make very fast decisions, even based on not a lot of information.
Right,
But the simple, like some of the more simple decisions or strategic decisions can be paralyzing.
right, right. Yeah, and that's what I find to be true with many of the people I work with, that it the big decisions, I think, always takes time. They always take time to process and to think about, right? And
Hmm.
so it makes sense that you might stay with indecision for a while. It's the tiny decisions that I think really stumble a lot of people, really is frustrating, right? Because
Yeah.
I just want to make this decision and I'm not able to make this decision. And I was talking to somebody recently, and it was a decision that they had to make between going to work like planned, or going to a breakfast that was like a networking thing that doesn't happen all the time. But it was a very difficult decision because work, you made the commitment to go, but this thing really looks like it would be fun. Like, and it was just a hard decision to make for this
Yeah.
person. And that's where it's frustrating, because it's just like, oh, I just want to make the decision and I can't seem to make it, right?
Yeah.
Um
And
and
here's a thing I want to add on to that, which is
yeah.
I actually think a lot of ADHDers who have been thoughtful about their own exploration of ADHD know how to make decisions, right?
Mhm.
Like if you ask me to sit down and document how decisions are made, I could probably do a pretty good job of it,
Right,
right?
right. But it doesn't
It's
make making,
it
or
doesn't
doesn't
make any
make
difference. Yeah.
just, yeah, that doesn't make it easier, because I
And
mean
I
it's
could
not
help
any
you
different.
decide what to eat for dinner
R
in a
For sure,
heartbeat.
right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. It's
And
not the
I
not
think it's
knowing how.
exactly, and I think it's because in some circumstances, I'm not in touch with my sensory experience. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know what I want to feel like from any given moment to the next.
Right.
So
Yeah.
decisions become hard.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and
Okay.
I think with ADHD, just to break that down a little further, it requires decision making requires a lot of executive functions, right? We've got to plan, prioritize, organize, memory. All of these executive functions have to do with decision making. And that's why, like, we just got finished with the declutter challenge, and there's a lot of decisions that have to be made when you're decluttering, right? Throughout the
Mhm.
whole um, event, we're making decisions on what to declutter, what to save, what to let go of, where is it going to go, where is it going to go, if I'm going to keep it, where's it going to go if I'm going to let it go. Like, there's just so many decisions, and it can be really overwhelming because we're using all those executive functions. But also, it's overwhelming when you have a lot of options, right? There's too many
Yes,
things to think about. And you may reach a decision, but then how many times do you second guess yourself? Did I make the right one? What
absolutely.
if? Yeah.
Because I live so firmly in a place of future perceived rejection by others and the world and my kids and my wife, that
Hmm.
making a decision, if it involves anybody else but me, well, it really me too, is all about will this decision lead to future pain and
Right.
all of the different paths that
And
it takes to get
scenarios.
there. Yeah, right. Right.
Well,
And that
and that's
slows
the
down. That makes
anxiety.
decision making a bog.
Well, for sure. And if you have anxiety with your ADHD,
Hmm.
that opens that door really nicely.
Yeah.
Let's think about all of the possible solutions and things that could go wrong. So overthinking and analysis paralysis. So this is what we're going to start talking about are some of the common issues, some of the symptoms that happen when you're in this analysis paralysis.
Yeah,
Do you think you overthink things when you're
probably.
making a decision? Do you feel like you're analyzing it too much, or you're putting more uh measure on it than maybe it needs?
Yeah, sometimes. I don't feel like I'm a middling decision maker. I feel like I make decisions at the extremes. So either I make decisions much more quickly than others because I don't want to I don't want to exist in like cogitation mode or fear mode. I just want to put it behind me and not think about it anymore. Or I spend way too long perseverating
Right.
over possible choices and
Yeah,
don't pull the
yeah.
trigger. Like I spend a lot of time if there are features on a product that I have to buy that's more than, $50. If I'm looking at a website and there are options to choose, that'll take me a long time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Once I
Yeah.
figure it out, I know exactly. Like somebody else could tell me, "Hey, what of these things should I buy?" I know exactly what to say, but only because it took me a year to get there.
Right, right. Which is a long time, right? I
Yeah,
mean, and
right.
a long time to be living in indecision. That's the
Yes.
part that I don't like living in. Like, for me, I definitely would prefer to make the wrong decision than to be in indecision, because
Yes.
that to me is so anxiety,
Oh, that's
driven,
so
or
you.
what
I
I
could have,
mean, it's just
yeah,
so I
fueled
hate
by
that.
anxiety. I could
Yeah,
have totally said that. If you'd asked me how you make decisions, that I would have said those words. I
mhm,
totally get that about you.
mhm, yeah. I'd rather just do it and see what happens.
Yeah, reap the repercussions, whatever they may
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, most of the time, I make pretty good decisions. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a
If you're
pretty
playing the
good decision
numbers,
maker.
yeah,
Doing
it's all
okay,
about
right?
odds. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well, the overthinking I see a lot with clients, especially when we're in a conversation and we're trying to go through the pros and the cons and all of these things that we do when we're trying to make decisions, right? The talking it out. And I do see what I notice as a pattern is a lot of overthinking in the way of, and I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but just putting a lot of value on this decision when really it could go either way and you're really going to be fine.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So people really they'll get stuck with overanalyzing every aspect and thinking about all of the potential outcomes, and leading to this paralysis where they can't choose anything. And then the decision is chosen for them. And I don't like that either. I
Yeah.
don't like decisions being chosen for me. I want to choose the decision. And that sucks. That's a bad place to be, right? When, oh, I don't even get to decide if I want to go to that event because now the event is over. And that's
Yeah.
frustrating.
Well, it's frustrating, and also like that gets back to my favorite siren song, intermittent reinforcement.
Mm,
Sometimes not going to an event because I was in analysis paralysis and having the event pass me by brings me a sense of great relief because I no longer have a decision to make. And
yeah.
there is
Yeah.
its own sort of dopamine cycle that feels like, oh, what a relief. I don't have to deal with
Right.
it anymore. I don't have to deal with the decision. I I just waited it out. And
Yeah.
sometimes waiting it out is a strategy in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Time
Hmm.
makes a lot of decisions for us, right? Just in
It
passing.
does. It does. And I think that, like, some of the bigger decisions, I need time to process and think about it and sit on it. And I think that, that's fair for a lot of people. Like,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about impulsivity, because that also is like the flip side of
Hmm.
making decisions too quickly. But another issue here that is common is the emotional dysregulation that comes with making decisions, because it is such an emotional thing. Depending on what kind of decision, and even like eating dinner is frustrating, can become an emotional thing,
Hmm.
especially if you're on a special diet or you're trying to, um, you know be really mindful of what you're feeding your family. Like there's a lot of decisions to make in making dinner. Like I really wish we could just not have dinner. Like why do we have to eat dinner? It's so stupid. So, all of these
Dinner is
things.
a favorite for both of us, and I'm sure people are dealing with listening to that and hearing it, because I don't think we're alone. And it goes back to something that our good friend Michael Felt said about delayed sensory affectation, because a lot of that of the decision making problem exists in the context shift, right? Like
Yes.
we are at work. Why should I have to think of dinner?
Right.
Because I'm a human being and part of a family, and I'm here, and it's kind of my job, because everybody else is out and they'd like to come home and have dinner, and they've worked hard too. And
Right.
yet I'm throwing just a little bit of a tantrum around this decision
Hmm.
because I'm in a different context right now, and I
Hmm.
can't do that.
Hmm.
And that's part of what makes it really frustrating. And it's interesting to think about this. What are the other contexts in which decision making slows down because of this, the context delay? Like I'm not in a good place
Yeah.
to make a decision, so I just get mad and I become dysregulated.
Right. And it's harder to make rational decisions when you feel that way, when you have that brain fog or that clouded
Yeah,
judgment. It's like, yeah, it's really hard to not be angry and to make a good decision.
right.
And so yeah, so that's definitely a big part of it. This is interesting, becoming distracted. So when I was doing the research around decision making and ADHD, I saw this come around and I thought, well, this is interesting. How does being distracted, you know, uh, postpone decision making? But then when I started reading more about it, it started making sense. The difficulty of focusing on like what is the decision and then getting sidetracked by every other kind of irrelevant information that kind of comes with that decision. So here we are
Hmm.
talking about meal planning, right? So I need to figure out what I'm going to make for dinner tonight. And then all of a sudden, I'm not just thinking about the meal for dinner tonight. I'm thinking about like, I don't know, some kind of nutrition article that I just read that, oh, red dye is really bad for you now. So like where's the red dye in my house? Like or
I've been
black.
dyeing every meal red for
Yeah,
years. What do
yeah.
I
And
do
like
now?
the black
Yeah, black plastic.
spatulas are
Yeah.
really bad for you now. And so like how many of those do I have? Like you can imagine like where all of a sudden what was supposed to be just what are we having for dinner now, becomes a lot of
A
things.
thing. Yeah.
It becomes a lot of
Yeah.
things.
It becomes a
Yeah,
lot of things. Yeah. Those are the domino decision making problems,
right.
right? There's just always something else falling on top of it.
But I have to say, I have a domino rabbit hole, from a new client on how they found us, which
Oh,
was really cool. So
we're the
she
last
listens.
domino. That's
We were
great.
the last domino, and it's awesome because she's fantastic, and she's so thrilled that she found us, which is great. She listens to a podcast, and the podcast that we did, I can't remember the host, but About Time. It's About Time.
Sure.
Um, yes. Uh, she was a guest on this person's podcast and then she liked her. And so she's like, "Oh, I need to look and, learn more about her podcast." And then she found us on her podcast and she's like, "Oh, I have ADHD and they're talking about this book. I'm going to buy this book. I'm going to go on the website and oh, they have a podcast." And now she listens to us. She bought the book and now she's part of our GPS membership program.
That's awesome. So
So
it's
sometimes
about time
rabbit
with
holes are good.
Anna Dearman Cornick.
Yes.
I had to go
Thank
check
you.
the
What's
podcast
her
feed.
name?
Anna Dearman Cornick.
Yes, great interview.
That
And
was
she has
great.
a great show. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So sometimes being distracted and going to these, little rabbit holes are not always
Yeah.
a bad thing. But
That's
anyway, I
fantastic.
had to tell you that because I thought that
I
was
love
very
it.
funny. Yeah.
Oh, that's really funny.
Uh, okay. So prioritization, that's probably not going to surprise anyone. Against kind of struggling to prioritize what parts or just different aspects of this decision can make it difficult, especially if it's not just a cut and dry thing. Maybe it's do I want to switch jobs? Do I want to move to a different city? Do I want to break up with my boyfriend or girlfriend? Or like, I mean, there's a lot of things there to think about. So trying to figure out like, again, not getting distracted and where do I put my focus? And that can be very difficult when
Yeah.
everything's coming at you.
Well, and it
Um,
also begs the question of like, once you get into prioritization, the dominoes that fall there tend to be more existential. Like, how do I know what's important to me? What am I? What do I exist to do?
What do
What
I
is my
want on
purpose?
my
Yeah.
tombstone?
What do I want on my headstone? Do I
Headstone.
want avocado on this toast? Like all of the questions become the same. Like
Yeah.
all of the choices are at the same level of importance. And that's a thing to be aware of, that I have to be able to say out loud, avocado toast is not my purpose.
Right. But then
Right?
I go to, do I have the mental effort? Like, do I have the energy to make the avocado on the toast? Or
Yeah.
do I just want to have toast because that's easier?
Yeah.
I don't
Maybe it's
know.
just
I mean,
toast and
right.
salt. I don't know. Like it's
Yeah.
just it is. When everything becomes massively important, nothing is, right?
Right.
To
Right.
paraphrase The Incredibles.
So on the flip side of this, we have when we make decisions too quickly, and that's the impulsivity.
Mhm.
Impulsivity. I'm going to say that several
Impulsivity.
times. The urge to act quickly without considering the consequences can lead to rushed decisions that might not be the best choice. But then again, sometimes they may be the best choice. So we don't know. It doesn't always have to be bad things. But that's when the impulsive buying can happen. I have a perfect example. My husband went to the grocery store the other day. He comes home and he's got this plant with him. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, what is that? And he's like, it's a basil plant. It was at the grocery store and look at it. It's beautiful and it smells so good. And I'm like, but what are we going to do with that basil plant? Oh, we'll use it. And he's like, and it was only $3.99. But then when I got to the cash register, they said it was $6.99. So then I decided I didn't want it because I didn't want to pay $6.99 for it. But then the girl like switched the price and gave it to me for $3.99. So I kept it.
Well, all right. I want to say first, on a very practical matter, having a fresh basil plant on your counter is really lovely because you do use fresh basil and it's great. Now, the
I just
decision
don't
to
know how
get there,
often we use basil in anything. Like, I don't even know. Like, I can't even tell you if that's a thing
oh,
for us.
it's such a good thing. You should start doing it. Just chop up basil. You know what you do? Here's what you do. I'm just going to tell you, sidebar, take a piece of toast, put a little mayonnaise on it, toast it, mayonnaise, a fresh slice of tomato, and chop up fresh basil and a little salt, and just take a bite of that and see what you think. I'm not
Okay.
I'm not lying.
And the
It's amazing.
mozzarella, like if you have mozzarella, right? Because
Well, yeah, but
that's the whole thing.
you don't even need
Oh,
mozzarella. Like
okay.
this is just we call it tomato toast.
Tomato
It's
toast. That
very
sounds
clever.
great.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So
Meanwhile,
meanwhile,
yeah.
that's just a basil plant. Now I have seen clients where I left on a Friday, I came back on a Monday and they bought a house. True
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Did not know they were even in the market. So so some things,
Sometimes the house buys you, Nikki.
it just happens.
Well,
I would
I'm the guy who
my
took my car for an oil change and came back with a new car.
with a new car.
Yeah.
I went prom shopping for shoes with my daughter and we came home with a puppy.
Hmm.
It happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, I think that it's something to just be when we're talking about decision making, it's just something to know that that's part of it. Sometimes decisions are really hard and sometimes they come very easy and the impulsivity can
Mhm.
be either good or bad. And I'll tell you, the person that bought the house, it was a great house. It's
Yeah.
perfect for her. So,
I mean,
and
it's
our dog,
haunted.
well, it's not haunted, but our dog,
You don't know.
sometimes we threaten to take him back. But for the most part,
Oh.
he's working out okay.
Do you get returns on a dog?
No, but we
We've had
threaten
him
it
on
all
a
the
year.
time.
We've had him a year and we'd like to return him.
Yeah, he's not working out. No, I'm kidding. We love our Cooper. He's
Yeah.
wonderful. But yeah, so that happens. So
That was a line in Shrinking. I think about this very often. This couple is looking to adopt a baby and they find out that there's a mother who's giving birth to twins. And one of the one of the parents says, "Can we take them both for a year and decide which one we like better and return the one we don't?" Like that's kind of where I go. Not with
right,
children, but with things. Like what's going to
right,
help me make this decision? How can I make my identity more clear about
Yeah.
how it's going to fit into my life.
I have a little tip. So I was shopping with my daughter and we were clothes shopping. And my tip to her is that if you try something on and you like it enough to where you're going to wear it tomorrow because you're so excited about this,
Hmm.
then buy it. But if you're not going to wear it tomorrow or you wouldn't wear it like leaving the store, don't buy it. And she has held on to that. Like, and that has helped her make decisions. Like, am I excited enough to wear this tomorrow? And if you're not, don't buy it. Just a
I
little
agree
tip.
with that. Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with that.
A little
It's
tip
like
for people.
shoes. Are these shoes that you want to try on and then wear out the door?
Right.
Those are shoes you should get.
Then those are shoes you should get. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So I do want to talk about like what are some things that we can do to help us make decisions. And what I have chosen to talk about today are the things that I have seen that have been the most helpful with my clients and the people that I've worked with.
Okay, this is great.
Uh,
This is a big how-to, right? Like we've been
this
talking
is
about
the
a
how
lot of
to.
maladaptive decision-making experiences between
Yes.
us. And
Yes.
here's what we do to make
To
ourselves
help.
whole with our decision. Yeah,
Yeah.
to help. Okay.
To help. And these are the things that have helped that I've seen help with other people.
Yeah.
Limiting your choices. And I think that that helps when you are able to set some boundaries and some rules ahead of time before you go into the search of a new dishwasher or a new appliance or, if you're going to go shopping for clothes, like what are you specifically, like what are the rules around it? If you can sort of start to set those things up ahead of time, it can help to limit your choices. Um, that
How do you
takes
define what rules are for a purchase? Like
Yeah,
what do you
so
mean by that?
what I mean by that is let's take the task manager because I do this with our membership program. If you're trying to decide what task manager to use, whether you're going to keep the one you have or you're going to do a new one, how do we limit the choices? Because there's so many choices. So,
Mhm.
a couple of rules that we could put in ahead of time is figuring out like what are the features that you have to have. So, anything that doesn't have those features are out. We eliminate those choices immediately. Ask other people what they use. If you're seeing a trend, and you're seeing that one or two things keep popping up, then just limit yourself to researching those two options and getting rid of the fear of the better option. Let's just focus on these two things. Um, Another rule could
FOBO. Let's just say it out
FOBO,
loud. FOBO. Get that in your
fear
head.
of better
Fear of
options.
better options. Yep.
Right. Another rule could be like giving yourself how much time do you want to spend on research? Because people beat themselves up when they're saying, gosh, I spent 2 hours researching for this and trying to make this decision. I didn't want to make that time. I didn't want to make, or I didn't want to use that much time. So setting up maybe some guardrails, like,
Mhm.
just to try to help. Um, the other piece to limiting your choices, though, is what are the routines that you're building in place for yourself? Because
Mhm.
if you have rituals, if you have a routine, that can help eliminate decisions because you have already decided ahead of time what you're doing with this moment of time. So, for example, like a morning routine, if you have a set of 3 tasks that you do in order every morning, that eliminates any kind of decision of varying away from that task because or from
Right.
those 3 tasks because you've already made those decisions,
Well, I mean, the
right?
Steve Jobs thing is one I come back to often, which is he didn't care for making decisions about what to wear every day. So had, he just acquired the same thing that he wore
All the
every
time.
day as a uniform. And that's just what he wore. He was comfortable and
Yep.
he felt like it looked like, and then he just was like, that's a shelf that he never had to think of to address in his brain. It was always
Yes.
done. We have the same conversation around meal planning. Like that's a hard thing for us, but part of the reason it's hard is because we live in a space where we think we have to be original every day, right? If
Right.
you make a meal plan that has the same stuff on it every day and you're happy, well then you're done. Like you can clear that shelf in
Yes.
your head. You don't have to create anxiety where none necessarily exists.
Right, right. And having that complication or those
Yeah.
complications coming up all the time.
Right. Right.
Friction, as you like
Friction.
to say.
Yep.
Yes. One of the other, I think, strategies that I think help most people that I talk to is talking it out.
Hmm.
ADHDers are verbal processors. It makes a difference to hear yourself work through a problem, come up with those different solutions, and then decide what to do. If you're making this decision alone, if it's a decision that's only going to impact you, definitely talk to somebody about it. If it impacts other people, talk to those people about it. That it also impacts. Like it doesn't have to be just your decision. Include everyone in it if it's going to
Hmm.
impact more than just one person. But definitely, even if it's just you, talking it out, processing it. Others can give you a different perspective. They can listen by asking questions to help you think of things in a different way or just to explain them. I would also, if you're going to talk it out with someone, tell them to be listening to the all or nothing thinking, because this is something that's so common with ADHDers and typically do not they don't catch it themselves. And
Yeah.
so if you're talking to a spouse or a friend, just letting them know, hey, this is something that I tend to do. If you notice it, let me know.
Yeah.
Um, and clarifying what it is that you really want out of the situation. What is this decision that's being made and what do you really want? And just being able to talk that through is huge because you don't have to
Huge.
just sit and think about it. You can actually talk about it. And then when you're doing this, you're also probably going to find some limiting beliefs or some negative self-talk that's coming up. And so how do you address those? So that
Yeah.
talking it out is, I just think, huge. You can do
Yeah.
that with a coach, you can do it with a therapist, you can do it with a friend, a partner, a coworker, a boss if they're supportive. Not all of them are, but some of them are great. And so if you have a
Yeah.
really supportive colleague or whatever, like that can make a huge difference.
I think you're nailing it with the pros and cons part, but and part of it with the like um the what's important to you part, talking that through most sort of
Mhm.
clearly, because this goes back to the organizing days, right?
Yeah.
The one lesson that I remember above all others from you is when you go into a mode of organizing a space, don't start by going to storables and finding a bunch of new tools to organize your stuff, right?
Yeah.
Determine your needs first. What is the
Mhm.
shape of the hole that you have to fill
Right.
before you start making the decision? And I let go of that often because I am so attracted to new shiny, right?
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
just, I see something shiny and I love it. And my head starts to manufacture the fact that the hole in my life is actually shiny shaped. And that's not always real, right? That's not
Right.
always real. I'm inventing reasons to make that. I guess we have a word for that. It's called rationalization. And
Yes.
I'm trying to rationalize it into my life. And that's where I find I get in trouble the most is I create a fantasy space and the decision starts to warp and it's no longer an authentic decision. It's not a decision I feel like I can trust. And
Yeah.
I am so aware of that sort of metacognitively that it slows down my decision making because I'm already judging myself for a decision I should not have made.
Mm. Yeah. How's that serving you?
It's not. Yeah, right. It's not
No.
serving me at all. Right. Not only the process is terrible, but also I end up, I'll end up getting mad at myself and spend the money anyway on the shiny thing and
Right.
end up at some level regretting it because I made a decision in haste or I wasn't right about that decision in the first place. And maybe it was a shiny shaped hole that would have really changed my life, but I missed the opportunity to take advantage of it because I was so paralyzed by that sort of metacognitive decision making stall.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting insight. The next thing to talk about, you hear this and you read this a lot when you're if you're looking for information about how to help you make decisions. They'll say, put a deadline on it. I think that it depends on putting a deadline, because if it's not a real deadline, it really is. I don't know if you can really convince yourself that this is a real deadline. Like, I think it's hard to trick your brain into that. So the question really is, will you honor it? And like, what does this deadline mean to you? Like, does it mean something for you to really honor it? And some things you just need more time to process, and you don't really know what that deadline is. Like, you don't really know when you're going to make that decision. But you'll know it when you make it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it putting a deadline, I don't know, it may work or it may not. So I would say for this, it's something to practice. But it's certainly not a rule of thumb for everything. I think it depends on what it is and
Yeah. And
who it's impacting.
deadline is a tricky word for it, because, we tend to
Yeah,
reserve deadline for something that actually has consequences if that deadline isn't met.
right,
And
right.
if you're just setting an arbitrary, quote, deadline for a decision
Does
that
it
you have to
work?
make
Yeah,
that doesn't have a decision, then you're sort of rewiring your brain to think of a deadline as something squishy. When we want deadlines to mean something, we want them to be
yes,
meaningful.
yes,
And, I love the idea to have this sort of marker in time, at which point a decision needs to be made. I do get nervous about calling it a deadline. I think
yeah,
in our
I do too.
brains, particularly, the words matter.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I agree. I agree. So that's not one that I necessarily see success with clients. It's something that we see a lot in resources, and
yeah,
just something to talk about. Like, does it really work with ADHD? I'm not, I don't know. I'm not sold. I'm
yeah,
not
and
sold
what
on it.
I'm not either. Well, I guess I could be. I guess
Maybe. I
like
don't
all
know.
of this stuff, context matters. Like what
It really does. Yeah.
there may be a hard deadline for you to make a decision. A deal is going to expire or something like that. But just be cognizant of how you're using that word around this stuff.
Yeah. Right. So this last one I think is so important, and it's something that I do as a coach, because my clients don't do it enough. And that is acknowledge the decisions that they're already making. So many folks will say, I am not a good decision making or maker. I have a hard time making decisions. But then when you really ask them questions about all of the decisions, or really ask them to tell you about all the decisions that they made just today, it's amazing. They're amazing decision makers. And so really giving yourself credit, and remind yourself that you are capable of making these decisions, and you're capable of whatever the consequences are. And that's the big thing, is that whether they're positive or negative, you are capable of dealing with that, and you will be able to deal with that. And when you are making these acknowledgments, you're building that confidence that I can make more complex decisions, and be more confident about that. And so really acknowledge what you're doing on an everyday basis, because you
Yeah,
are making decisions all the time, all the time.
all the time. That's it. I think you just said it. Like, we talk about context matters. What you said around that you are capable of dealing with the consequences of the decisions that you make. Part of the paralysis comes in the uncertainty of the consequences of a decision not being made or being made incorrectly.
Hmm.
And once you
Hmm.
realize that this is a decision that's likely not going to injure you or kill you,
Right.
or right, then you're in a much different position of accepting whatever comes. So why did you let the lizard brain make such a big deal about this decision about what to
Yeah.
make for dinner?
Yeah.
That's where I have to go, right? It's like
Right.
I know I can talk about the fact that I am throwing a bit of a tantrum right
Right.
now about dinner. I know
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
what does that allow me to do to make better decisions?
Hmm. There you go.
That was it. I
We
think that
did
was
it.
helpful for me.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah.
If it helps no one else, Nikki Kinzer, it was helpful for me to talk through these things.
Good. I'm so glad.
Yeah. Thank you very much. What are we doing next week? Tease us up.
So next week, we are going to be talking about, well, we have been talking about it, which is really interesting, because we have been talking about emotional dysregulation, right?
Mhm.
In these areas around problem solving and decision making. So we're going to dig a little deeper in what that's all about.
What's that all about? I said to myself just now, what a lucky guy I am that next week I get to learn. Well, thank you very much, Nikki Kinzer, and thank you, everybody. We appreciate you downloading and listening to the show. Thank you for your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute to the conversation, we're heading over to the Show Talk channel in our Discord servers, and you can join us right there by becoming a supporting member at the deluxe level or better. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.